The space station Nexus 7 hummed with the constant buzz of 1,000 different species going about their daily business. Sarah Martinez pressed her way through the crowded market district, her small human frame easily overlooked among the towering Zentarians and the broad-shouldered Korthek traders. She had been working as a maintenance engineer on the station for 3 years now, and while most aliens treated her with polite indifference, she had learned to navigate their complex social hierarchies. The artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth's, making her steps feel almost bouncy as she headed toward the engineering section. Her toolkit clinked softly against her hip, filled with the specialized equipment needed to repair the station's aging life support systems. The work was demanding, but it paid well enough to send money back to her family on Earth and save for her eventual return home. As she turned a corner into the less populated maintenance corridor, Sarah noticed she wasn't alone. A massive figure stood near the entrance to the restricted engineering platform, its back turned to her. The creature was easily 8 feet tall, with a muscular frame covered in dark, scaled skin that seemed to absorb the corridor's dim lighting. Long arms ended in clawed hands, and when it turned slightly, she caught a glimpse of a predatory face with rows of sharp teeth. Sarah recognized the species immediately. A Vorthek. They were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most aggressive predator races, banned from most civilized worlds after a series of violent incidents. What was one doing here on Nexus 7? The station had strict security protocols that should have prevented any Vorthek from boarding. She tried to back away quietly, but her toolkit scraped against the wall. The sound echoed in the empty corridor like a dinner bell. The Vorthek's head snapped around and its yellow eyes locked onto her. A low growl rumbled from its throat as it turned to face her fully. "Human female," it said in heavily accented Standard Galactic, its voice like grinding stone. "You will move away from this area." Now, Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to stand straight. She had faced bullies before, both human and alien, and running away had never solved anything. Besides, this was a restricted area that required her clearance level to access. Whatever this creature was doing here, it wasn't supposed to be. "This is a restricted engineering section," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "You don't have authorization to be here. I need to ask you to leave immediately and report to station security." The Vorthek threw back its massive head and let out a barking laugh that sounded more like a roar. Its claws extended from its fingertips, each one as long as Sarah's thumb and sharp enough to cut through steel plating. "You think you're human? Laws apply to me, little creature?" It sneered, taking a step closer. "I am Vexhar of the Blood Moon clan. I take what I want when I want it. And right now, I want access to your precious engineering systems." Sarah's mind raced. A Vorthek wouldn't be interested in the station's basic life support systems. They must be after something more valuable, something that could cause serious damage if tampered with. The fusion reactors, maybe, or the gravity generators. Either way, she couldn't let this creature reach the main engineering platform. "The security systems will detect any unauthorized access," she said, slowly reaching for the emergency communicator on her belt. "You won't get far before the station guards arrive." Vexhar's eyes followed her movement, and his lips pulled back to reveal even more teeth than she had initially seen. "Guards? You mean those soft Galactic Council weaklings? I have already dealt with 3 of them. Their weapons cannot penetrate Vorthak hide, and their strength is nothing compared to mine." The casual way he mentioned killing the guards made Sarah's blood run cold. This wasn't just a break-in, it was a massacre in progress. She activated her communicator, hoping to get a signal to the security center, but Vexhar moved faster than anything that Large should have been able to move. His massive hand slammed into her shoulder, sending her flying across the corridor. She hit the wall hard enough to see stars, and her toolkit scattered across the floor. The communicator skittered away into the darkness, its screen flickering and going dark. "Foolish human," Vexhar snarled, advancing on her as she struggled to get back to her feet. "Your species is weak, fragile, you have no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. How did such pathetic creatures ever leave their homeworld? Sarah tasted blood in her mouth where she had bitten her tongue, but she managed to stand. Her shoulder ached where the creature had struck her, but nothing felt broken. She had been lucky. A blow like that could have easily shattered human bones. "You want to know how humans left Earth?" she said, wiping blood from her lip. "We didn't evolve claws or fangs because we didn't need them. We had something better." Vexar paused, seemingly amused by her defiance. "And what was that little creature?" "Brains. And the stubborn refusal to give up when things get tough." The Vorthik laughed again, but this time there was less humor in it. "Brains? Your technology comes from the Galactic Council archives. Your ships are built with alien designs. Even this space station uses artificial gravity technology that your species could never have developed alone." He was right about the technology, Sarah knew. Humanity was still relatively new to the galactic community, and they depended heavily on more advanced species for their scientific knowledge. But that didn't mean humans had nothing to offer. "Maybe our technology isn't the most advanced," she admitted, checking the distance to the engineering platform. The access panel was only 20 feet away, but Vexar stood directly between her and it. "But we have something that a lot of species in the galaxy seem to have forgotten. What could humans possibly have that superior species like mine lack?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Desperation, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive." Before Vexar could respond, she lunged forward, not toward him but toward her scattered tools. Her fingers closed around a plasma cutter, and she rolled away from his grabbing. Claws just as they raked the air where her head had been. "Clever little mouse," he admitted, circling her like a cat playing with its prey. "But even with your tools, you cannot hope to match Vorthak's strength. I could tear you apart with my bare hands." "Maybe," Sarah said, backing toward the engineering platform. "But you'll have to catch me first." She triggered the plasma cutter and sent a brilliant blue beam across Vexar's path. The tool wasn't designed as a weapon, but the superheated plasma could cut through almost any material. The Vorthak jerked back, and for the first time, she saw something that might have been caution in those yellow eyes. "You cannot run forever, human. This corridor has only one exit, and I'm standing between you and it." Sarah's back bumped against the access panel for the engineering platform. Her keycard was still clipped to her belt, and she could feel the familiar weight of it against her hip. If she could just get onto the platform, she might be able to access the emergency systems and call for help, but Vexar was already moving, rushing forward with those terrible claws extended. Sarah dove to the side, feeling the wind from his passing ruffle her hair. She rolled, came up running, and slapped her keycard against the access panel. The platform's force field shimmered and dropped. "You only delay the inevitable," Vexar called after her as she sprinted onto the platform. "There is nowhere else to run." Sarah reached the central control console and began frantically entering her authorization codes. The platform was suspended 50 feet above the station's lower maintenance levels, connected to the main structure by a single bridge. If she could just activate the emergency lockdown, the platform would be sealed off and she could wait for rescue. But as her fingers flew over the control panel, she realized with growing horror that someone had been here before her. Half the emergency systems had been disabled, and the communication array was completely offline. Vexar hadn't just randomly chosen this location. This was planned. Professional. Heavy footsteps echoed across the platform behind her. Sarah turned to see the massive predator stalking toward her, no longer hurrying. He knew he had her trapped. "Did you really think you were the first human I have encountered?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge of amusement. "I have studied your species extensively. I know all about your desperation and your stubborn refusal to surrender. It makes the hunt more interesting." Sarah's hand closed around the emergency shutdown lever. If she pulled it, the entire platform would lose power and drop its magnetic locks. In the reduced gravity of the space station, the fall wouldn't be immediately fatal, but it would certainly be unpleasant for both of them. "You're making a mistake," she said, backing toward the platform's edge. "Humans aren't just stubborn. We're also really, really stupid when we're cornered." Vexhar's laugh was cut short as Sarah yanked the emergency lever. The platform shuddered, and warning lights began flashing throughout the engineering section. But instead of falling, the platform simply locked in place. Emergency protocols prevented it from dropping while someone was standing on it. "Foolish human," Vexhar snarled, lunging forward. "Now you have nowhere left to run." He was right. Sarah found herself backed against the platform's safety railing with nowhere else to go. The Vorthek advanced slowly, Savo. Vexhar hesitated for just a moment when he saw that smile. In all his years of hunting across the galaxy, he had learned to read the faces of his prey. Fear was expected. Desperation was common. Rage, defiance, even madness were all emotions he had seen in the final moments before a kill. But calm confidence? That was new. "What are you planning, little human?" he asked, his claws still extended but his advance slowing slightly. "Nothing complicated," Sarah replied, her hands moving slowly behind her back. "Just remembering something my grandmother used to tell me when I was little." The Vorthak's head tilted slightly, his predatory instincts warning him that something had changed in the dynamic between them. But his pride wouldn't let him back down from a mere human, especially one he had already cornered. And what wisdom could an old human female possibly have that would matter here? Sarah's fingers found what they were looking for behind her back. The platform's safety railing was designed to prevent accidental falls, but it was also equipped with emergency release mechanisms for maintenance work. Her years as an engineer had made her intimately familiar with every system on the station. "She used to say that when someone pushes you around, you don't push back," Sarah said conversationally. "You use their own strength against them." Vexhar's eyes narrowed. "Human philosophy will not save you from Vorthek claws." "No," Sarah agreed. "But human engineering might." Her thumb found the emergency release button on the railing section behind her. The safety barrier was designed to support the weight of maintenance workers in the station's low gravity, but it was never meant to restrain anything as massive as a charging Vorthak. Vexhar lunged forward with a roar that echoed throughout the engineering section. His claws reached for Sarah's throat, fully expecting to end this game once and for all. But instead of trying to dodge or block his attack, Sarah did something that violated every survival instinct the predator. Understood, she stepped forward to meet his charge. Sarah's hands shot out and grabbed Vexhar's extended arms just above the wrists. The impact of his momentum carried both of them backward toward the railing, exactly as she had planned. Her thumb hit the release button, and the safety barrier gave way with a mechanical click for a split second. Both human and Vorthak hung suspended over the 50-foot drop to the maintenance levels below. Vexhar's yellow eyes went wide with shock as he realized what had happened. His massive weight and forward momentum had committed him to a trajectory that was now carrying him over the edge, but Sarah wasn't. Falling with him, years of working in low gravity. Environments had taught her how to use momentum and leverage to move objects far heavier than herself. The same techniques that allowed a small human to maneuver massive cargo containers in the station's reduced gravity worked just as well on overconfident predators. Instead of falling, Sarah pivoted on the ball of her right foot and used Vexhar's own forward momentum to swing him out over the drop. His massive frame became a pendulum with her as the pivot point, and his weight actually helped her maintain her balance on the platform's edge. "Impossible!" Vexhar snarled, his claws scraping against Sarah's coveralls as he tried to find purchase. "Humans are weak. You cannot possess such strength." "You're right," Sarah grunted, her muscles straining against the Vorthak's weight. "I'm not stronger than you. But I understand leverage and I know how to use it." She shifted her grip and gave Vexhar a hard push outward, using his own desperate thrashing to build momentum. The predator's claws raked across her arms, leaving shallow cuts, but her thick work coveralls prevented any serious damage. "This is not possible," Vexhar roared. "I have studied human anatomy. Your species lacks the physical capability for such feats." "Did your research include humans who've been working in variable gravity for 3 years?" Sarah asked through gritted teeth. "Because I've been hauling around equipment that weighs more than you do on a daily basis. The only difference is that my equipment doesn't fight back." With a final heave, Sarah released her grip on the struggling predator. Vexhar's eyes went wide as he began to fall, his massive frame tumbling through the air toward the maintenance levels below. Even in the station's reduced gravity, it was a long way down. Sarah collapsed against the platform's edge, breathing hard and shaking from the adrenaline. Her arms ached where Vexhar's claws had caught her, and she could feel warm blood seeping through her coveralls. But she was alive, and the immediate threat was over, or so she thought. A thunderous crash echoed up from the maintenance levels, followed by the distinctive whine of emergency force fields activating. Sarah peered over the edge and saw Vexhar, pulling himself out of a pile of twisted metal that had once been a cargo container. The fall had obviously hurt him, but Vortex were notoriously difficult to kill. "Human!" His voice roared up from below, carrying a fury that made Sarah's bones ache. "I will tear you apart for this insult. No one throws Vexhar of the Blood Moon clan like common refuse." Sarah could see him looking around the maintenance level, searching for a way back up to the platform. The main lifts were locked down due to the emergency, but there were maintenance shafts and service tunnels throughout the station. A determined Vorthak could probably find a way back up within minutes. Her communicator was still somewhere, in the corridor where Vexhar had knocked it, and the platform's communication systems had been sabotaged. She needed to warn station security about the threat and get medical attention for the guards, who had been attacked, but more importantly, she needed to figure out why a Vorthak assassin was interested in the engineering section. The creature had mentioned wanting access to the station's systems, but Nexus 7 was primarily a trading post. What could possibly be valuable enough to warrant this kind of risk? Sarah limped back to the main control console and began running diagnostic checks on the station's critical systems. What she found made her blood run cold. Someone had been systematically infiltrating the station's computer networks for weeks, installing backdoors and disabling security protocols. The attack on the engineering section wasn't random. It was the final step in a much larger plan. She pulled up the station's current status and felt her heart sink. 3 cargo ships had docked within the last hour, all of them registered to shell companies that her quick research revealed were probably fronts. If Vexhar wasn't working alone, if he was part of a larger Vorthak raiding party, then the entire station was in danger. The emergency systems showed that 14 members of the station's security force were currently listed as offline, either dead or unconscious. The remaining guards were spread too thin to mount an effective defense against a coordinated attack, especially if they didn't know what they were facing. Sarah's fingers flew over the control panel as she tried to access the station's defense systems. Most of the automated weapons were offline, their targeting systems corrupted by the same malware that had compromised the communication array. But the engineering section had its own independent security measures, systems that required physical access to the platform to modify. She found what she was looking for in the emergency protocols menu. The station's fusion reactors could be configured to emit a controlled electromagnetic pulse that would disable most electronic systems within a limited radius. It was a last resort measure, designed to prevent reactor overload in the event of a catastrophic system failure, but if she modified the pulse, frequency, and amplitude, it might also disrupt the cybernetic implants that most Vorthak warriors use to enhance their natural abilities. Their neural interfaces, targeting systems, and communication devices would all be affected. It wouldn't kill them, but it would level the playing field significantly. The only problem was that triggering the EMP would also disable most of the station's systems for several hours. Life support would switch to backup power, gravity generators would fluctuate, and the docking bays would be sealed. Any ships currently docked would be trapped until the systems could be restored. Sarah hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks. If she was wrong about the scope of the attack, she would be condemning thousands of innocent beings to hours of discomfort and potential danger. But if she was right and this was indeed a coordinated Vorthak assault, then doing nothing would result in far more casualties. The sound of metal grinding against metal echoed up from below. Vexhar had found a maintenance shaft and was climbing back toward the platform. She could hear him getting closer, his claws scraping, Against the tunnel walls as he pulled his massive frame upward, Sarah made her decision. She initiated the EMP sequence. But instead of triggering it immediately, she set it on a 5-minute delay. That would give her enough time to get clear of the immediate blast area and hopefully reach one of the station's emergency shelters, but as she turned to leave the platform, she found herself face to face with another Vorthic warrior. This one was smaller than Vexhar but looked twice as dangerous, with cybernetic implants covering half of its skull and weapons grafted directly into its forearms. "Going somewhere, little engineer?" it asked in perfect standard Galactic. Its voice carrying the electronic modulation of its implants, Sarah realized that Vexhar's attack on the platform hadn't been the main assault, it had been a distraction. While she was dealing with one threat, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the cybernetic Vorthic raised its weapon arm, and Sarah could see the energy building in the integrated plasma cannon. At this range, even a glancing hit would be fatal. She dove behind the control console just as the first blast scorched the air where she had been standing. "Your little light show was amusing," the creature called out, advancing steadily across the platform. "But now you die like the vermin you are." Sarah's mind raced as she crouched behind the console. The EMP would disable the Vortex cybernetic systems, but she had to survive long enough for it to trigger. And with Vexhar about to emerge from the maintenance shaft, her situation was about to get much worse unless she could turn the situation to her advantage. Sarah had spent 3 years maintaining the station's systems. She knew every power conduit, every safety protocol, and every emergency measure built into the engineering section. More importantly, she understood something that most aliens seem to forget about humans. They were incredibly good at breaking things when they needed to. The platform's fusion reactor monitoring system was directly beneath the control console, connected to the main power grid through a series of superconducting cables. If she could cause a feedback surge at just the right moment, she might be able to amplify the EMP effect. When it triggered, she pulled out her plasma cutter and began carefully slicing through the access panel beneath the console. The cybernetic Vorthax footsteps were getting closer, but its cybernetic enhancements made it overconfident. It was taking its time, savoring the hunt. "Come out, little human," it taunted. "Face your death with what dignity your pathetic species can muster." 1 minute and 45 seconds. The access panel fell away, revealing a maze of glowing power conduits. Sarah had worked on these systems dozens of times, but never under combat conditions. One wrong cut and she could trigger a reactor overload that would destroy the entire section of the station. Heavy claws scraped across the platform's metal surface. Vexhar had finally reached the platform level and was pulling himself up through the maintenance access port. His yellow eyes immediately locked onto Sarah's position behind the console. "There you are, little mouse," he growled, his earlier amusement replaced by cold fury. "Did you enjoy your brief victory? I will make sure your death is neither quick nor pleasant." The two Vorthax began flanking her position, moving with the practiced coordination of experienced hunters. Sarah realized that her cover behind the console wouldn't protect her for much longer. They could attack from multiple angles, and she had nowhere left to run. 1 minute and 10 seconds. Sarah's plasma cutter found the primary power coupling for the reactor monitoring system. If she severed it at the exact moment the EMP triggered, the resulting power surge might overload every cybernetic system within 100 meters. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was something humans were very good at. "You know what I've learned about your species?" Sarah called out to her attackers, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "You're really good at intimidation and really bad at adaptation." "Human philosophy again?" The cybernetic Vorthek laughed. "Your words cannot change the fact that you are prey and we are predators." "Actually, that's where you're wrong," Sarah replied, positioning her plasma cutter carefully against the power coupling. "Humans aren't prey. We're something much more dangerous." 55 seconds. Vexhar and his cybernetic companion were almost in position for their final attack. Sarah could see them exchanging silent signals, coordinating their assault. In a few seconds, they would rush her from both sides. and even her human ingenuity wouldn't be enough to save her unless she changed the rules of engagement entirely. "We're survivors," Sarah continued, her finger hovering over the plasma cutter's trigger. "And when survivors get backed into a corner, they don't just fight back. They burn everything down." 40 seconds, the vortex struck simultaneously, coming around both sides of the control console with weapons raised. But instead of cowering or trying to run, Sarah did something that once again violated every predator instinct they possessed. She stood up to meet them. Her plasma cutter sliced through the power, coupling at the exact same moment that both vortex fired their weapons. The severed conduit erupted in a shower of sparks and electrical feedback that cascaded through the entire reactor monitoring system, but Sarah wasn't there to receive the weapons. Fire. 30 seconds, years of working in low gravity had taught her how to use momentum and physics to achieve seemingly impossible feats of agility. She launched herself straight up, using the platform's reduced gravity to vault clear over the cybernetic vortex head while its plasma bolt scorched empty air. She landed behind Vexar, who spun around with surprising speed for such a massive creature. His claws raked the air inches from her face, but Sarah was already moving again, rolling beneath his guard and coming up with her work light in her hand. 20 seconds, the high-intensity beam caught both Vortex in the eyes, their enhanced vision making them more susceptible to sudden bright lights than baseline humans. They stumbled backward, temporarily blinded. Giving Sarah the opening she needed, she sprinted toward the platform's edge, where the damaged safety railing hung loose from her earlier improvisation. Behind her, she could hear the Vortex recovering, their enhanced reflexes already compensating for the temporary blindness. 10 seconds. Sarah reached the edge of the platform and grabbed the loose section of safety railing. The twisted metal was heavy even in low gravity, but her years of manual labor had given her the strength to wield it like an oversized club. 5 seconds. Vexar charged toward her with a roar of rage, his claws extended and his massive frame moving with terrifying speed. The cybernetic Vorthak was right behind him, its weapon arm already charging for another shot. 3 seconds. Sarah pivoted and swung the twisted railing section with every ounce of strength in her human frame. The improvised weapon caught Vexar across his midsection, and the combination of the impact and his own forward momentum sent him tumbling toward the platform's edge. 2 seconds. The cybernetic Vorthak fired, but Sarah was already dropping flat against the platform's surface. The plasma bolt passed harmlessly overhead and struck the reactor housing behind her. 1 second. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from the modified reactor systems like a shockwave of invisible energy. Every piece of electronic equipment on the platform died instantly, plunging the area into darkness. The cybernetic Vorthak's implants sparked and went dark, and the creature collapsed as its enhanced nervous system overloaded, but the EMP had one more effect that Sarah hadn't anticipated. The pulse interacted with the damaged reactor housing that had been struck by the stray plasma bolt, creating a localized gravity fluctuation that sent everything on the platform tumbling toward the damaged edge. Sarah felt her feet leave the platform's surface as the artificial gravity field fluctuated wildly. For a moment she was weightless, floating in the middle of what had become a three-dimensional battlefield. Around her, toolkits, debris, and 2 very surprised Vortex were also drifting in the chaotic gravity field, but while the Vortex thrashed helplessly in the zero-gravity environment, Sarah had spent 3 years learning to work in exactly these conditions. She used a piece of floating debris to push herself toward the platform's anchor points, where she could grab onto the structural supports. The gravity field stabilized a moment later, but by then it was too late for her attackers. Both Vorthaks were caught in the artificial gravity well that was now pulling everything toward the platform's damaged edge. They tumbled over the side and fell toward the maintenance levels below, the cybernetic enhancements useless in the aftermath of the electromagnetic pulse. Sarah hung from the platform's support structure for a moment, breathing hard and trying to process what had just happened. Her arms ached, her coveralls were torn and bloody, and every muscle in her body felt like It had been put through a mechanical stress test, but she was alive. The emergency lighting flickered, back on as the station's backup systems engaged. Throughout Nexus 7, security teams would be responding to the electromagnetic pulse and the massive systems failure it had caused. The Vorthic infiltration team would find their technological advantages neutralized and their carefully planned operation in ruins. Sarah pulled herself back onto the platform and stumbled toward the now-dead control console. Without power, she couldn't access the computer systems. But there were still manual communication devices scattered throughout the engineering section. She found an old-fashioned intercom system that ran on independent power and activated the station-wide emergency broadcast. "This is Engineer Sarah Martinez. In the primary engineering section," she said, her voice echoing throughout the station. "We have a code-red security situation. Multiple Vorthic infiltrators have penetrated station defenses with inside help. All security teams should be aware that the attackers have cybernetic enhancements that may be temporarily disabled by the recent EMP event." She paused to catch her breath, then continued. "The engineering section is secure, but I need immediate medical assistance for wounded security personnel. And someone needs to check the docking bays. There are at least 3 ships that may be part of the infiltration team."